A bill co-sponsored by an East Texas lawmaker is supposed to give small businesses the ability to challenge federal regulations they feel are too costly. It's called the Prove It Act, and among the bill's 17 co-sponsors is Congressman Nathaniel Moran. It recently passed the House with 2 Democrats voting in favor of it. East Texas News' Michael Richardson sat down with the congressman to discuss what the Prove It Act would change and whether it could actually become law.
We could probably list 1,000 small businesses in East Texas that we've talked to that along the way, the number one thing that they talk about is the regulatory burden from Washington, D.C.
That regulatory burden Congressman Nathaniel Moran discusses led to the introduction of the Prove It Act. The bill, which passed the House largely on partisan lines earlier this month, would create ways for small businesses to challenge regulations they feel are too costly. The law states that petitioners must prove why a proposed rule would have a significant economic impact on a substantial number of small entities and present a proposed solution to the problems or issues raised. Speaking on the House floor, Moran says the bill would strengthen the Regulatory Flexibility Act, which passed in 1980.
We need teeth to that 1980 Regulatory Flexibility Act, and the Prove It Act will do just that. It'll change what has not been done in the past, and it will restore power to small businesses today to push back against new regulations.
Moran says that if the government determines there is a significant economic impact on small businesses, they have to find a way to alleviate those costs. If the government does not do that, small businesses don't need to apply by the rule.
We don't want to see there be such a burden on businesses that they can't just actually do the thing that they're intended to do, making widgets or making loans or whatever it is.
With the 118th Congress set to end in less than 3 weeks, Moran isn't confident the Prove It Act will become law, but he hopes it has a future.
What it does is it sets up for the 119th Congress the ability to push this forward in the Senate, a new Senate with a new president, and get this kind of thing signed into law.
Michael Richardson, East Texas News Weekend.
The Prove It Act is not the only law that passed the House this Congress that aims to reduce regulations. Another is the REINS Act, also co-sponsored by Representative Moran. The bill would mandate a congressional approval process for a major rule which needs to hit certain criteria, like the Prove It Act. The REINS Act has not passed both chambers of Congress.